Heckscher-Ohlin theory is often known as the 2 by 2 by 2 model. Two goods, two factors of production, two countries. The key assumption that makes a difference between the Ricardian model and the Heckscher-Ohlin model, beyond the increase in the number of factors, is that in the Heckscher-Ohlin model, we assume that all of the technologies are the same across both countries. The reason this is done is because we've determined that only one difference is needed to drive trade. So in order to keep the model simple, we make the technologies in the two countries the same, and we say the key difference, or the driver of trade, is that the factor ratios, capital to labor ratios in the two countries are different. Four well-known theorems come out of the Heckscher-Ohlin theory. The first one, called the Heckscher-Ohlin theorem, says that a country will have a comparative advantage in, and should therefore export, that good whose production is relatively intensive in the factor with which that country is relatively well endowed. Or more intuitively, that a relatively capital-abundant country should export relatively capital-intensive goods and import relatively labor-intensive goods. The second well-known theorem is due to Rybczynski. The Rybczynski theorem says that countries that save and invest little in new capital will tend to produce and trade goods with high labor content. Or more intuitively, increasing the country's capital stock will aid in the production of more capital-intensive goods, and at the same time reduce the number of labor-intensive goods. Conversely, increasing the quantity of labor in the country will lead to the increase in the production of labor-intensive goods. The third important theorem is the Stolper-Samuelson theorem. The Stolper-Samuelson theorem intuitively says that if exporting will raise the price of your exports, then the factor that is used relatively intensively in the export sector will benefit, and the factor that is not relatively intensive in that sector should be hurt. For example, if a country is capital abundant and it's exporting capital intensive goods, the price of the capital intensive good will rise from trade, and capital will be the beneficiary. The return to capital will increase. The fourth well-known theorem is the factor price equalization theorem. And this theorem says that under the assumptions of the Heckscher-Ohlin theory, trade will lead to the international equalization of factor prices. So wage rates in two countries will equalize if the countries are using the same technologies, following the assumptions of the Heckscher-Ohlin model, and the returns to capital across the two countries will equalize. And this is independent of any mobility of factors. A corollary to this theorem is related to the mobility of factors, and it says that trade in goods is effectively trade in the factor services, so that the export of a capital-intensive good, raising the return to capital, is analogous to exporting the capital to a country that is capital scarce and seeing a higher return for your capital. The reason you're getting a higher return is because the capital scarce country pays a high return on capital. The capital abundant country pays a low return on capital. And when capital moves from the abundant to the scarce, the return to capital should increase.